We're going.
All right, welcome. It is now 6:30. All board members are present. We'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approving the agenda, or there are no changes to the agenda.
There is an addition.
Okay, there's...
So, it'll be actually, what's the difference? About 120 in action items, so it's the second half of the meeting. We need to set tuition rates for ARGO. So it'd be either, I think it's letter X, or numerator, or letter E, one or the other.
That's on the second agenda though, Pat, we can do that.
Yeah, you can.
This agenda, there's a motion
Oh,
for
I
the
see.
second agenda, so this one will just have no changes with this one.
Okay.
Okay. So with no changes to this first half of the meeting, the agenda, I will take a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Moved by Mahoney and seconded by Prohl to approve the agenda. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
All right, next we'll move on to our budget hearing, so I'll turn it over to Craig.
Okay. All right, so if you want to get in a position where you can see the screen up here, you got a copy of the budget in your packet along with these slides. If you want to take notes on the side or whatever.
Is that the update for you?
What's that?
It's in here.
Yeah, no, this is budget.
I just got the screen great.
Thank you.
It's approved.
Okay. So in this upcoming year's budget, you're going to see that some of these numbers are a little higher, and that's because of the ESSER 3 funds. Okay, a lot of that is budgeted into these different funds here. So the general fund is a little higher because of that. Typically, that's usually about, I think last year's was 4 or 5 or something like that. So 4. Now this year it's 4,825,987, and most of that is due to salaries increasing the positions. We have an extra aide out at Collin. We have some summer school. We have the interventionist position and things like that, along with some software and stuff. So some of that software is now, instead of being in the capital outlay, it'll be over there too. The capital outlay fund, as you can see, is a lot larger budget than what we're used to. Usually it's about 900,000. This one's 2.3 because it includes the, hopefully it'll include the HVAC project. But I budgeted that in there so we don't have to do a supplemental budget for it later. So of course, if we aren't able to do that project, then we just wouldn't spend those funds in there. And then it'd be, take out 1.2 of that and it's right at 1 million.
Yeah, but you're looking at a $2.4 million difference, or is it 1.4?
The HVAC project was 1.4 plus the 75,000 for the architectural fees.
Okay,
I budgeted for that in there as well.
all right.
Also in there is a minibus that would be paid for out of the ESSER 3 funds, hopefully, and things like that. That's 60,000 of it.
Okay, well, that 1.4 makes up most of that
Yeah.
difference anyway, so.
Take that and the 75 and the 60, you're under a million. You're right at that 900,000 something. Special education, that one is over $1 million for the first time in my career, we have it's an out-of-district considered placement, correct, Mr. McMillan? Is the reason for that. I mean, that's an extra, right about, or just over 100,000 a year for that. So that's why that one is over $1 million this year.
How long will we have them out of play, out of
We're
district?
required until they turn 21.
Right, and how old are they?
We got some time left. I think. It's
2 to 3 years.
Yeah,
It
3
depends
years.
on when they're back. I don't know when the birthday is, or anything like that. So it's either 2 or 3 years. Depends on when their birthdays fall. So, but if you, we'll talk about the cash balance later, and our cash balance in sped will, I think we'll be fine there too. Food service fund, it's tough. Didn't change. I mean, not a whole lot actually, other than their salaries. Looking to possibly add a part-time position in there because we got more state or the federal reimbursement. Everybody will be receiving the free meals again, so as long as they don't change that to the 4 1/4 like they talked at one point, we should be fine there. And then the enterprise fund, that is the preschool and driver's ed. Okay, so that one's $71,142 between those.
So, getting back to the food service fund, Craig, we're gonna be in line with our money situation,
Yes,
and maybe you're gonna get into that.
well, when we, like, right now, our cash balance in there is 89,000. We need to be in that 80s, depending on your 3 months
Okay.
of operating expenditures still, but we're very close. But I took the custodial salaries for them cleaning the lunchroom for 3/4 of an hour every day.
Sure.
Took part of my salary out of there to get there, and then we purchased a new oven that hasn't come in yet, so it's technically not out of here cash-wise, but that's an $8,000 purchase to replace one of our 2 double-stack ovens. Okay. So the next one here compares our expenditures to the revenue. As some of you, the veterans know, that the deficit always is about that $300,000 in the budget side when we do this, but when it comes down to it, we've been transferring from the capital outlay about 200 to maybe 250, depending on the year. Actually, we've been down as low as 150 to 250. But anticipated expenditures at 4.8, anticipated revenue just under 4.5 million for the general fund. So, but that, I'm trying to think, that does include a budgeted line item of the transfer. So then it's more apples to apples of the last few years. But we did not, we will not be transferring money from the capital outlay this year to the general fund when we talk about the financial report later. Capital outlay, just under 100,000 short of the revenue, 150,000 short on the revenue side to cover all of those expenditures. Special ed is about 37,000 short, and then the food service says 20,000 short, but we're usually okay there too, because the federal revenue, depending on what happens, and the number of meals that the kids eat and stuff like that all make a difference. The breakfast is what got us this last year. We had a lot more kids eat breakfast. Well, then you're getting that federal revenue that you weren't getting before, because our breakfast numbers probably tripled because they were free. So, yep. Any questions on the deficits there?
My only question was that those deficits are fairly common at this point in the year.
Yes. Because you always want to budget a little high on the expenditures, and we budget a little low on the revenue, and those, as you can see, our capital outlay, that does include, I believe it was 20 or 30,000 for textbook purchases, but I don't know that neither one will reach that. But that's also why we We did a few more desks last year. We did a few more classrooms with desks. We're going to do that again this year to make all the upper age elementary wing, that 4 through 6, all have the same desks. So we ordered 42 more of those, which is a few more than normal. Normally you do one classroom of that. And then we got two rooms in the high school as well for next year in there to replace some of those. Since now's the opportunity, if we don't have a big textbook budget, we might as well replace other things in other areas. And we did in the past, last year we did ceiling tiles. I budgeted about $5,000 for that. And with this, if we do that's one thing I forgot, the capital outlay has that lighting project in there as well. That $232,000 lighting project. So we didn't budget anything for ceiling tiles because that'll take care of all that. Unfortunately, we did last year. We replaced quite a few of those, but especially at the high school end where they're a little more warped. But
Craig, help me understand operational. I'm used to putting a budget like you're doing right now, and you're discussing that, but I guess for feedback purposes, you're projecting deficits. It's pretty common, I think, but when at the end of the year, when you balance the books, it doesn't really typically get realized. The deficit doesn't really come to fruition. I mean, so, you know, I guess if you ever get asked on the street that, what are you doing? You're running a budget, you know, that's projecting a deficit constantly. Well, it's not uncommon. It's just when you get to the end of the school year and you balance the books, because he projects, you know, expenditures a little high and revenue a little low, you're going to end up with a deficit. But when it all washes out, if anything, it's minimal.
yeah, ours has been
Agree or
150 to
disagree?
2. Yeah, ours has been 150 to 250 capital outlay transfer, but we also have been planning that too in there on the revenue side.
And this year, for 21-22, I mean, you're going into it, we're not going to operate under the premise that we are going to rely on Rob and Peter to pay Paul. We're not moving capital outlay dollars into or general fund expenses into the capital outlay fund, because honestly, there's probably no need to do that at this stage of the game with all the new money coming in. So.
And the enterprise fund up there does not show any deficit because that'll be technically the revenue for that is coming from the general fund. And that's already budgeted on the top side up there as far as an expenditure in the general fund as well. But this last year was the first year I've had to do that. So it was new. And you'll see on the financial report when we talk about that after this, it was like $36,000 that was transferred from the general fund to that enterprise fund to balance it. And that's for your other half of your preschool teacher coming out of the general fund instead of the sped now. So here's kind of just a percentage breakdown of what each category fund-wise what is. General fund is over half of your overall total budget, and remember this 8.5 is ballooned. I mean, I'm not used to talking, usually it's about 6 million, so it's 8.5 for the total budget and all the funds together. So. Okay, now the trends for the last 5 years. General fund, as you can see, it's kind of been going up a little bit at the end. Well, that's because we've had new monies that are budgeted in there that if you don't spend them, you lose them, or you don't get the revenue side either. So that's what these last 2 years, the reason why they kind of are growing up to the upward. I don't see that as a problem of ongoing expenditure so much that we have to worry about. Capital outlay, there's a couple big spikes. One was the track project, and this other one would be the HVAC project. Special education is pretty, climbing because you got increase in. We have none of these are changing any levies either. These budgets are not changing any of our levies in capital outlay or special education. That wasn't mandatorily changed by the state because the state sets, your general fund levies for ag and owner occupied and business and stuff. And they also set what the minimum special education is for in order to get state aid. And remember, we do not get state aid in special education, but we've been taxing at the minimum. That is one thing. You know, when you look at our balance, I know we have an out-of-district placement, but our balance, you know, has grown a little bit. After this out-of-district placement, you may be able to, and maybe even with the out-of-district placement, we may be able to lower that below what the minimum is to get state aid, since we don't get any state aid anyway. Or no, is it to get state aid, or is it go to the extraordinary cost fund?
You have to be max, or excuse me, your levy has to be at the max in order to apply for extraordinary cost fund, so
We're not even close to
you're
that.
not even close to doing that, so.
But we also, if you wanted to go lower, if our balance, you know, if you don't want our balance to grow, you might be able to, that would be one that you might be able to lower levy-wise, is special education possibly.
You're in a
Because-
unique situation in special ed. I've never heard of that before, and it's crazy.
So, any questions on that? And here's where we're talking about with the mill levies. The owner occupied, you know, these four things are set by the state. So, I mean, we don't have any control over these levies here.
Those are adjusted every year by your legislature.
Yep, and it's based on what your valuation is. They take your valuation of your properties in your district and adjust them accordingly, based on if their valuation's gone up, how much. So those are pretty steady, actually declining for the taxpayer purposes. Tax request comparisons. You know, with that other one, we're showing a downward slope for the general fund, and it's just a little bit less, 20,000 less total. Capital outlay left it the same because we have to pick a dollar amount. Last year was 840, so this year will be 840,000. It's no longer you say 1.5 or wherever, you got to give them a dollar amount. So the dollar amount that I'm going to, in this budget, requesting is 840,000. That may lower the capital outlay levy when somebody talks a levy. You know, it's been kind of around that 1.55. This may be 1.52 next year, because if the land valuation went up and we ask for the same amount, the levy goes down, even though they're probably paying the same. Just looks, it sounds better. Special education, and that went up a little bit because the state changed that minimum. I believe it's 1.46 or something like that.
Sounds right. Used to be 1.4.
Yeah, it's just, it went up just a little. So there's the 5-year tax dollar comparison. You know, the special ed, it went up just because the state sets it. Capital outlay, we've kind of been steady, considering we've done a pretty nice project, and then without having to raise the taxes. That's what we said back when we started that project. We wanted to not do that, and we've been successful at that. Here's our breakdown of our different expenditures in the general fund. Now this is just like, so we take all the salaries in the general fund, and of that 4.8 million, 2.9, almost 3 million of it is salaries. And then just shy of $1 million is the benefits portion of that. So of 4.8, darn near 3.9 of it is salaries and benefits. And that's the way that's the driving for, I mean, that's majority of the budget.
80% of a general fund budget typically is human resources, so if not more.
So you can see we only spend about 100,000. That travel does not include busing. Okay, that travel is just like vehicle, gas, things like that, meal money, staying overnight for FFA trips and things like that. All of that travel and stuff come up to about 100,000. Purchase services, 400,000. Those are some, the train agreement would be some things that are in that. Our computer, anything that we, speech, language, no, that's sped. But the train agreement, the computer side of it.
Tech solutions.
Tech solutions, yep, that we contract out. Supplies are only about 146,000, and then the student transportation is the busing, only. So about 230,000 of the budget is the bus. And I left that the same because according to our agreement, the rates didn't change this year, so. And we were under it this year, so as long as we don't drive more miles, should be okay there. And the next one kind of shows the percentages, and like Pat was saying, 80%, ours is right at 81, so. Salaries and benefits of the total overall. Any questions on that?
Do the new board members understand under the spread that we were talking about with about $100,000 going to placing one of our students out of district? We
Yeah, I could, yeah. I could do.
We're responsible for those students until they're.
Yeah, I mean, if you got questions, you certainly can ask, but I mean, you really don't, there's no choice in the matter, and that's
Right?
what their IEP dictates, and that's in the best interest of the child, then you do what you do.
But because they live here, it comes out of here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. We are still responsible for them,
Yeah.
regardless of where they're attending school.
The 5-year expenditure comparison, as you see, the salaries are kind of growing a little bit, and when you talk in dollar amount, but when you're talking the percentage of the overall budget, it really hasn't changed. It's still at 81%. I mean, even though that graph shows that it's going up a little bit. The benefits, kind of the same. The benefits of 3 teachers not taking health insurance affects those benefits. I mean, when you're given the $8,000 to $9,000, $10,000 deal to a teacher for health insurance, if we have 3 or 4 of them come in, new ones, and they don't take it, that's why you see that little dip in the middle there, is more than likely why. I mean, nothing, retirement and Social Security doesn't change, it's the health insurance. Transportation, that's been pretty steady. Purchase services, kind of the same. Supplies the same there, so. And here's a fund balance comparison. Now this does not have where our fund balance is gonna end this year. This is through FY20. We've forecast that, can't get my cursor to look there. Oh, it doesn't show up on the screen up there. It's gonna go up from where it's at right now. And there is a waiver right now for the fund balance to, you have to be under 30% of our school size. I think when this one was done in FY20, I think we were about 24% if I remember right. But you don't want to be teetering too close to that 30% either. So, and that's where we wouldn't do the capital outlay transfer this year. So, even though it's budgeted, just because it's budgeted, there's no sense in doing it. But I could see that growing. It's probably up to, what would it be? Just shy of 200,000 probably. That's what I'm forecasting. I think it's going to happen. So instead of 1.4, it'll be closer to that 1.6 up there. Any questions on that? That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Craig. Next, we'll move on. Are there any conflict of interest? All right. Next is to approve the consent agenda 1. And that would be to accept the financial reports, approve
I'll explain this in just a sec.
June minutes, approve claims, those without conflicts of interest, approve contracts, hire summer school staff, and accept letters of resignation. Are there any changes, additions, or removals?
The only reason I'm giving you a new financial report is shows the original one had 30,000 for that enterprise fund transfer, and that wasn't enough. When I did the packet last week, I talked to the auditors. We went through our balance sheet, and it was 669.59 to actually zero it out.
Okay,
Okay, that's the only change on that.
all right. All right. If no one has any additions, or would like anything removed, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved by Leishman, second by Nebo to approve the consent agenda. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
All right, next we'll move to public input or correspondence. Hearing none, we'll move on to our staff reports. We'll start with our superintendent report.
Just a few things here. I put, well, I'll apologize, but I put several pieces of information in your packet. So, there's two ways of doing that, I guess. So for the sake of time, I think most of it is relevant to the new board. I mean, I can go over those things, Jim and Barb, if you want to endure. It's up to you guys, but we can circle back to it when Jed and Lindsay get on, if you want to. So it would start basically with that section of where it's the update on homeschool notification. It's an email, and then there's some documents about homeschooling on there, and then you get into a safe return to in-person instruction, the continuity of services plan, and then you get into another document that's essentially the ARP plan. And I know I'm using acronyms and using terms where you're probably not exactly familiar. That's where I put the information out in the packet, and I emailed those incoming board members about what that information is in respect to. So, you know, because there's a place, I think we could have another conversation about it, you know, just for the sake of Jim and Barb's time, you know, to do that a little bit later if we wanted to. So, because I want you guys to be informed, you know, so there's some conversation, I guess more education on my part as to what all those documents are within the board packet, so you have an awareness about what it is when you hear those terms, what is actually being referenced with that. So I prefer, I guess, to do that way. I probably should have put that in the agenda down on the bottom side of it rather than on the first side of it, so Jim and Barb didn't have to listen to the rhetoric. So if that's okay with everybody, we can do that and circle back to it on the agenda. So trying to think if that would come. You could do that after all the consent agenda number 2.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after you go through the legalities of reorganizing, we could have that conversation if that's okay. Craig, you got huge heartburn with that or
Nope.
not?
We'll just
Mr. Fisher, Mr. Norton,
Changes
is that
on that.
okay?
What?
Yeah. So we're gonna have that conversation about our staff reports when Jed and Lindsay get on after we reorganize. Is that okay? Okay. That's my fault. I didn't even look at the order of things, I guess. I should have been paying more attention as to Jim and Barb, not that you're not interested, it's just that.
Gosh, I feel left out now. don't
Yeah,
I?
right. You don't have to endure.
So you want to move 9 all sections?
Oh, yes,
Okay,
yes,
no
we
problem.
could. So the 3 of us will have the conversation.
No problem.
Yeah.
Next, we'll move on to action items, which are to approve the claims, those without conflicts of interest. City of Parkston has a bill, it's $1,083.48, which I will abstain from.
I think that was the right number, Craig. That's the number you gave me.
yeah.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved by Mahoney and second by Nebo to approve the bill from the City of Parkston for that amount that Barbara was, $1,000.
$1,083.48.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried with McKean abstaining.
All right, next on our agenda is to, yes.
So comment on that, Craig and I talked about this, so those of you that are coming on new, typically what I'm used to operating under is that executive session is always on your agenda. When you don't see an A, a B, a C, or something of that nature where it stipulates a student matter, a legal matter, or a personnel matter of that nature, then you're not gonna have one. So just because it says executive session on there, doesn't mean that you have to have something. If there's something that falls underneath that, such as an A, B, or C, then you can plan on having some conversation. But if you don't like that, and that's one of my things that we talk about as a board when it reorganizes as to, the structure of the agenda, as well as, some questions I have for you guys about distribution of your agendas and things like that, so your board packets, but there is nothing for executive session.
Okay.
So
So we don't need to do exec or adjourn, or do we need?
We need to adjourn
Need
this
to
portion,
adjourn.
this
Now
part of the
you're-
meeting, yep. So you
Now
guys can leave.
go.
you're gone. You're
Okay.
gone.
What's the process of reorganizing?
So that's every school, or every July, so you have to go through all of those, stipulating your paper, your, pick your new president, pick your new vice president, things of that
Okay.
nature, so.
Well, at this time, then we will adjourn. It is 7:00.
So we need a
I need a
motion.
motion. Yeah.
So moved.
Moved by Mahoney,
Oh, did you go in there? Jim?
seconded by Leishner to adjourn at 7 o'clock. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay.
I've been
you.
part of it, thanks Jim and Barb for serving all the whatever years you did,
Glad-
to appreciate
glad I
it,
could.
so, yeah.
Yes.
You bet.
Don't be a stranger,
Oh,
right?
no, if you guys need anything, don't be afraid to call.
Thank you.
Okay,
So,
Miss talking.
good luck to the new board members.
We'll see you around. All
Thank
right.
you.
Yes, let me know if I can do anything.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Anybody need a break, or should we just keep